took kind of extraordinary circumstances for you guys to get into surf. So I thought that was a good way to introduce each and every one of you guys. And after I introduce you guys, I'm going to ask you guys a question specific to you. So I'm going to start with Manav Thapar in the end there. So Manav's upbringing had quite a few unique circumstances that conspired to make him the avid outdoorsman that he is today. So Manav, you told me that your parents are very passionate about outdoors, more than the average East Indian immigrant. So that's already pretty unique. And when Manav was young, they moved to Norway, and that's where Manav found a motley crew of immigrant kids who explored Norway together. Again, that's also very extraordinary. East Indians don't move to Norway. I grew up with a lot of East Indians, actually, and I can tell you, Manav as a surfer is literally a needle in a haystack. So in his teens and beyond, after moving to San Francisco, he was a natural climber and found himself excelling above the sponsored climbers that he knew. A friend of his who happened to be African American took him out surfing for the first time, and he was hooked. So Manav has nearly 20 years of professional experience designing and leading outdoor diversity programs, and so he's going to bring a lot of that knowledge and experience to the discussion. So Manav, my question to you is, when you moved to San Francisco in your teens, was it rare back then to see people of color climbing and being part of the outdoor programs that you were a part of?
Absolutely. I think 25 years ago when I got into the outdoors, climbing, snowboarding, skiing, there was no one that looked like me. So it was unique, but it was different. And then I would always get like, huh, you climb? What? Can you really? Do you know what you're talking about? You know? So it was different. But to me, it was like something that I did naturally. I loved it. I loved being in nature. And then transitioning to surfing, and I got into surfing with a close friend of mine who's also unique. And we kind of taught ourselves how to surf. And we would be out here in Pacifica by ourselves, and we would go, rent boards here. And people were like, what, you two are going to go surf? Do you know what you're doing?
Next, I'm going to introduce Kyla Langen. Kyla's grandparents moved their family of 7 kids from Minnesota to Carlsbad in 1954 by doctor's orders. Her grandfather had MS and was told to get to the ocean to help manage the disease. I can't even imagine a doctor saying that these days. But they ended up buying the one remote and secluded beach house that they could afford then. And your grandfather lived 10 years beyond what the doctor said. So this is the kind of family that Kyla grew up with. They lived right on the ocean. They all learned to surf. She can't even remember the first time she got on a surfboard, because it could have been any one of your family members who brought you out, and they surfed every day. Of course, they all believed in the healing power of the ocean. So you were a natural water baby, ocean baby. And so she entered her first contest at the age of 12, and soon she was on her way to becoming pro. She eventually surfed her way up to the ranks to become 16th in the world, while keeping her all the while keeping her sexual orientation under wraps. So she's going to share some of the inside stories of the misogyny and aggressions that she experienced in the pro and sponsored track, which she sees is getting worse. So that's really interesting, and really want to hear about that. Obviously, there's a lot more work to be done in that area, and Kyla, you are doing the work. Her experiences inspired her to start Queer Surf in 2016, a community to support the queer lineup. They organize retreats, lessons, surf meetups to provide a safe and inviting surf environment for the queer community. So Kyla, my question to you is, in your experience, how many pro surfers do you think are gay?
Oh, wow.
Female and male.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we're starting in deep.
Yeah, right. A lot, definitely. When I was doing it, a lot of the females were gay. And I didn't know that until traveling to my first event, to the first international event, and we were staying with some with some Australian friends, a friend of a friend, and show up in the backyard, and there's like all these women like with hats, backwards hats on, skating around, so they're like bikinis, and it's like, what is this scene? Like, there's just a whole crew of like gay female surfers somewhere that are all touring around together. So that was my first glimpse, and yeah, going into it, I didn't realize how many folks were gay. The men, it was way more under wraps, and it still is. So really couldn't tell you about on that side of things, because a lot of them, there was always rumors, but that was really under wraps. But at this point, it seems like there's less gay athletes. I don't know if they're just really closeting themselves more in the industry, or what, but it feels like a decade ago there were a few more. So, yeah.
We will kind of
We'll get
dive
back
into
to
that a
that.
little bit.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, next, Rhonda Harper. Rhonda Harper, founder of Black Girl Surf, grew up in landlocked Kansas City, Missouri, to parents, landlocked, to parents who were very active in their local NAACP chapter. She learned how to swim in her backyard because they had a pool. Like, that's extraordinary. Very unique circumstance. When her parents moved to the family to California in her teens, that's when you fell deep into surfing. Rhonda, you're probably one of the few black girls in your community, or maybe the only one, who was obsessed with Gidget and the surf culture.
Yeah.
And she finally got her chance to surf when she was sent to Hawaii to stay out of trouble. Hawaii, of all places.
I'm a huckster.
Where her older sister happened to be going to school and living in a gated community with a private beach on the North Shore. That is very extraordinary. And then a crew member from Magnum PI saw teenage Rhonda watching them surf, and he invited her to paddle out with him. She was like, hell yeah. Of course, she got pummeled, emerged from the water, crushed, and her swim top totally off. She was mortified, and from then on, she only surfed alone. So basically, she taught herself how to surf on a private beach on the North Shore. Yeah. I can't even get into how many different careers she's had. This girl knows how to reinvent herself. But her passion for surfing always has been consistent and brought her through many careers, including getting connected to the Black Athlete Sports Network as a writer, commentator for surf contests, and really was able to bring a lot of black and brown surf and athletes to the forefront. And then she founded Black Girl Surf, which is currently training and fundraising to get a couple of West African female surfers to the 2020 Olympics. Tati was right here, one of them. And she's training, she's laid up right now with a bust up.
Fractured foot.
Yeah, foot, but.
It's not surfing related, it's skateboarding.
So, my question to you, as a black girl with parents, very active in the NAACP, what did you think of Gidget when you were watching in that context? And what did your parents think of you watching Gidget and being totally obsessed with surf culture?
So I'm from Kansas City, and I'm a 70s baby. So I grew up in it right after the Board of Education in Kansas. All of us, and my parents were dead center in civil rights. And I went to an all-white school, all-white Catholic school, so I was getting harassed all the time. The only positive images that we saw as African Americans at that time were the surf movies that came on in the summertime. We're in Kansas City, so there's no beach, but Gidget played, Beach Bag Bingo, How to Stuff a Wild Bikini. One of those movies had Stevie Wonder in it, and that's how I got hooked on all of these movies. Little Stevie Wonder was here singing Happy, and that was the only thing I could relate to at the time. I've since met most of the characters of all of those movies in my travels. So Deadhead, I've met Two-Step Terry. So I've gotten, it's been a journey. So my parents, you know, they didn't want me to, they wanted me to be whoever I wanted to be, as long as I was good at it. They were like, I don't care what you do, you can make ice cream as long as you're good at it. Like, you don't go out and embarrass me. Like, if you're gonna do something crazy, like, I want you to be a lawyer. My mom wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a pediatrician in the beginning. That's what I wanted to be. And my dad was like, no, you're not gonna be a pediatrician. I said, I want to go in the military. My dad's like, you're not gonna last. You don't even listen to me now. You're not gonna listen to somebody else far away. So they, you know, they didn't care who I was going to be. They just wanted me to be good at it. And so my dad said he helped veterans after they came out of the Korean War and all that, get back into society. And so he always told us, if they don't have a job that you want, create it. Black Girls Surf is the world that I want to see. So I've created the world that I want to see through Black Girls Surf.
Last but certainly not least is Natasha Brown. As you saw in the video, she only became a black surfer when she came to California. Natasha, like Rhonda, was probably the only black girl in town who grew up fascinated with surfing, but in New York. Natasha actually grew up with two single moms, her Jamaican birth mom who lived in the Bronx and her adoptive Jewish mom who lived in Manhattan. Again, very extraordinary. She traveled between the two moms who supported her in her surf obsession. Her birth mom enrolled her in swim classes and took her to the beach as often as she could. But it wasn't until she went to Costa Rica to teach at an unconventional mindfulness school, which I thought was really cool. I had to add that in there. Did she really learn to surf? So you were there for about 2 years. You didn't really want to leave, but your mom was like, you better get on with your life. So she moved to California, a surf destination with real jobs. But surfing in the North Pacific is an entirely different experience for Natasha on many levels, and that's exactly what we're gonna get into with her tonight. So Natasha, the first time we were talking, you gave me some really interesting insight into what surfing as a black woman is like, from managing your hair to finding wetsuits that actually fit your body. To me, that was really interesting because it really revealed how skewed the surf industry is, right, to a certain body type. I'd love for you to share some of your frustrations and solutions that you found. Please feel free to plug any brands.
Yeah. Great question. I think for me, my mom always stressed growing up that kind of your appearance was part of your identity and beauty. And I think that is a common theme in the black community. And so when I started surfing, there's a bit of conflict. The biggest one being hair. It was like, my hair is my beauty, and I'd come out and I just looked a hot mess. So one of my challenges was, how do I exist on land as a black woman, but also don't commit my life to like being in my hair after I surf. So for me, that was one of the biggest challenges, and honestly, my solution to that was just I stopped. Can I curse in this? I stopped giving a fuck. I incorporated it, and it was like, great, whatever happens on land happens on land. And then from there grew other things like when I was in Costa Rica, finding bikinis that would hold everything in. It was another thing that I struggled with because a lot of bikinis are made to stay on body types that were not like mine. And so I'd oftentimes find myself like going home and making some other type of adjustment because there was nothing that existed to suit my body type. And then coming to California, I encountered the same thing with wetsuits, where my friends would be like, you're buying another wetsuit again? And it wasn't because I was just running through these wetsuits, but I could find nothing that like fit my body and allowed me to really surf. Plugging a brand here. I finally found a suit, Matus wetsuits, super flexible. It was the first wetsuit that I put on, and I was like, oh my God, my thighs fit in this, my ass is okay in here. I can paddle, like everything is great, and it, for me, not only changed my surfing, but changed my experience in surfing, where I no longer felt like I was being restricted by a bunch of things, and I was like finally free to surf, so. Yeah.
So I thought a good way to start off is to get us all on the same page with the history of surfing. And I thought Manav would be a good person to do that since you're an adjunct teacher, professor at SF State. So Manav, you're going to give us a brief overview from the first recorded sightings of surfing in Polynesia and West Africa, how surfing was eradicated in those areas, and then up to the Western reintroduction to surfing with Duke Kahanamoku. Take it away. Thank you. Yeah, that was just, we wanted to get us all on the same page on that in terms of just the indigenous history. And after Duke, really indigenous people and POC, people of color, mostly fell off the surfing evolutionary timeline with, of course, just a few exceptions. And then, of course, I also did want to mention, in West Africa, because of the slave trade, of course, the ocean became a place of danger. So surfing was totally eradicated in that way. So fast forward to, in the States, during segregation, blacks were only allowed on designated beaches. Of course, they were eventually driven away as coastal properties values rose. And then socioeconomic factors created by modern and institutionalized racism fed the cultural drivers that kept blacks and people of color off the California coast. Of course, this goes parallel to many sports and professions, et cetera, that were shaped by the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, and institutionalized racism. But I want to bring up one black-only beach in Southern California, which was named Inkwell after its visitors. And it was located at the end of Pico in Santa Monica. It was there that the first documented black surfer entered the ocean and paddled 12 miles to surf Malibu. And this was in the late 40s. His name is Nick Gobaldon, and he died in 1951 while surfing Malibu. We actually have Rhonda to thank for getting Nick recognized with a plaque in 2008 at the former Inkwell Beach site. And it was after that he really got a lot more visibility and was featured in numerous articles and documentaries. And he was actually also half black and half Mexican, also something that Rhonda uncovered and revealed. He is a legend. So today, of course, the bulk of surf media is dominated by white male athletes and female butts. I was looking at clips from old, Gidget episodes, and yeah, it was the 50s, but man, it's so misogynistic. And it was totally accepted back then, right? And then the movie Endless Summer really cemented a very colonial and racist mentality to surf travel culture. This colonial mindset by Western travelers is quite embedded into our culture, really, at large. And it really takes a lot of curiosity, self-learning, exposure, experiences, and desire, really, to reverse not only our biased education, but this human tendency for tribalism and to impose otherness. So, even personally, when I travel, it does take a lot of experiences to get out of the mindset. We really are brainwashed to have that kind of imperial perspective. So understanding and digesting this history, I think, is really important in that process. So my first question to you guys, reflecting on this history, how do these facts frame your relationship with surfing and the surfing community?
Well, all of those facts frame what I do. This originally started out, I'm a fashion designer, I'm not a historian, I'm not a PhD. I just wanted to make clothes because Roxy just wasn't working for me. That bathing suit we're talking about at 15 years old wasn't definitely a Roxy bathing suit because that was what you were doing. But it didn't quite work out. So, I started looking for things that were familiar for me, where I could get a bathing suit that would fit me. Find me somebody that was going to look like me and be around me. So the surf media now, we've taken away from the original point of surfing. Surfing is about fashion, fitness, health, beauty. These are the things that are fashion industry. It's about product. It's not really about your skill or who you are in the water. It's really about selling a t-shirt, and that's what this is. And so the surf media picks up on news and they run with it. Like if Kelly Slater blows his nose, 15 stories are gonna come out about how he blew his nose and how he got in trouble for it. And you won't hear about that one surfer that just entered the WSL in South Africa. That's the first Zulu surfer, female surfer, and her name is Sam Keeley. So there's a lot of things that get overlooked because of the fashion industry. Part of it. Because you need to sell a product. That's part of it. So in all of the surf media, what they're looking for is what's going to sell that t-shirt, what's going to sell that board. They're not looking for, did that hurt your feelings that there were only girls with blonde hair in that ad, that you couldn't get a bathing suit because your breasts were bigger than an average person? This is where we are, and the surf media is like one of the main vehicles that is just keeping everybody under, like, it's oppressive. If you're in the industry like me as a fashion designer, I started out a celebrity designer. I thought I was like the head of the hills, and then I come in the fashion industry and find out that I'm like way down here on the floor. My last client was Eddie Murphy. So here we are now because of my color, right? Not because I'm a fashion designer, because of my color. That's the media.
We'll pass it along.
All right, so I'm reflecting a lot on, in the history, thinking of the history of surfing, how much of it was a privilege, how recreating was a privilege, and how it still absolutely is. And so with Queer Surf, the organization, we started to try to get more queer folks, more LGBTQ folks out in the water, because it is a privilege, but everyone should have access to it. And it's wild that there's all these aggressions towards us to try to get us out of the water, to try to keep us away from the water, to not enjoy it, when, it's a privilege, but everybody should have access to it. And so that's my current mission, to get everyone out there.
I can't remember it for the life of me, but I had a revelation watching Black Panther. It has to do with surfing. And it's the last line. I can't even, I wish I could say it. The last line before he dies. Anyone know it?
It's like throw me off the bridge or throw me in the water where my ancestors
Yeah.
died or something crazy. Yeah.
Because any bondage was better than
Any bondage is better than
Yes. Exactly. We're there.
We're there.
And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. My ancestors are from the water. This is why I have such a strong connection to the water. And for me, that changed surfing from something that I was obsessed with and was an obsession of my entire life to like, oh my God, like this is my whole being. Like this, my ancestors are from the water. I'm a water person. Surfing isn't just something that I'm doing because I like it. It's something that I was born to do. So the more that I learn about the history of surfing, I understand more of my own involvement and attraction to the sport.
I got into climbing. I did really well in climbing. I tried to get sponsorship, couldn't because I don't fit the mold. Long hair, brown man. I can't sell T-shirts. I can't sell climbing gear. I was into snowboarding. I wore a lot of Patagonia gear. Couldn't get sponsored by. I wrote them letters like, "Hey, I snowboard. I've did all these peaks," and it's funny because I would read about people who were climbing and snowboarding, and I was doing more than what they were doing.
So you brought up actually something that was my next question is, Localism. Very loaded. Yep, many layers. Localism is so baked in to the DNA of surf culture. And I want to hear what you guys think of localism in the context of the lack of diversity in surf.
Okay, so when I came back from Hawaii, I went straight to Santa Cruz. So let's discuss this for a second. Okay, so in this context of localism. So I was dating a white guy at the time. He was nice. He was like he was nice. He was one of those. He was a Top Gun pilot at the time. He was stationed at Moffett Field at the time. And he was just gorgeous. He was a beautiful guy. And his name was Troy. Anyway, we were down in Santa Cruz, and I'm proud. I'm surfing now. I'm grown. I'm surfing. We doing this. Well, we're down at Lighthouse Beach before they even had stairs. I don't know where those came from, and the dogs. I don't know where that came from. But this is how old I am. So we were down there having a good time. We climbed up that hill. I don't know if you know where Lighthouse Beach is, but we climbed up the hill. I get to my car. At that time, I was driving a 300 ZX, and in 1986, that was like Porsche. It was that was it. That was what you were driving. And as soon as I looked, there wasn't a parking lot. There's a parking lot over there now, but as soon as I looked over, I saw on my car in wax, "Go home, nigger," on a black car that had been baked in the sun. Needless to say, I had that car repainted before one of my friends got home, because she was just like, "I'm not going to ever drive in that car. You don't have to worry about it." And so that was my first experience dealing with localism and racism, both at the beach. And that happened in my own turf. The very first beach I ever laid eyes on was Lighthouse Beach. Now imagine coming back, you're proud, you learned how to surf, you earned your stripes, you've gotten beat down in North Shore, Hawaii, and you come here and it's a flat day, and then you go to your car and you see "Go home, nigger," and you thought I thought I was Kelly Slater. And it turned out to be the most racist thing I've ever seen, and that came straight from localism. And I knew those guys; they hang out there, and I'd seen them hanging, by the car, kind of like that. So cut to the year of our Lord 2018, and I'm back in Santa Cruz, the Pleasure Point, and now I'm arguing with grown people who are old enough to be, I'm sure, are old enough to be somebody's grandfather. They had to be somebody's grandfather. And I'm getting vibe. I'm not even in the water. Haji was in the water. I'm not even in the water. And I can hear it on shore. I'm the coach. I'm listening. They come out of the water. Poor Chelsea was there too. We didn't understand why the localism was going on. This dude raises up and he's literally yelling, and this is localism. You don't understand. I'm like, dude, let me buy you a beer, yo. Like, calm down. Why is this got to be like this? He's like, this is our territory. I'm standing in the middle of the street of Pleasure Point yelling at this grown grandpa about the beach, which is free, and it's a public entity. Like, why am I arguing you about territory on the beach when it's public property? And that's where we are. We're grown men have decided to intimidate people who look different than them for no reason at all. There was no reason for that. I had a beer afterwards because I needed one. I'm sure Haju and poor Chelsea over there, they were like, what the heck? Haju's coming from Senegal, now you have to do, she comes from an all-black country, and you come to Santa Cruz of all places, and then you get vibe. You don't want to share the love anymore. You don't want to surf at the surf. You don't want to go to the surf shops. You don't spend any money in this town. Now you just alienated everybody. Now I'm at Waddell Creek where I can be alone and nobody is around there. So there's that part.
You're hard to follow. I think we could all go down the line and tell our horror stories of getting heckled and getting yelled at, and literally at the lane, I've been going down the line on a wave and somebody drops, twice this happened, drops in after you and goes down the line and physically shoved me off the back of the wave. and had my car keyed at the lane.
Mhm.
It's just rampant. I mean, it's alive and well, and it's an extension of entitlement, and I don't know. I don't see an end to it immediately. It's kind of daunting, but little by little, we're going to get out there, and we're going to empower each other to feel welcome and to feel not ownership, but to feel welcome in these places. And
But you know, the way that localism is so baked into the DNA of surf culture, like how do you see inclusion working with that? Or is it totally not, you know, do they not go together? I mean, is that going to be,
right.
like, what do you think about?
I mean, the trouble is it takes having conversations with these people. And they're not the people that you really want. But I mean, I feel like the lineups are big enough. You know, you don't have to be best friends with people. People need to just learn there's different peaks, you know, or you can be out there together. And I do feel like there's places where the localism has, you know, let up a little bit, and it's like, okay, and those people think that, oh, that spot's over, you know, because we lost control of it. But I don't know. Who else? Those are my thoughts. It's a tough one.
Loaded, yes.
Yeah.
So when I moved back to the States, I moved to Santa Cruz, and I lived on 32nd, so I surfed the hook because I'm a shortboarder. And I think in my first 2 months of living in the States, I got really good at getting out of people's way more than surfing, because I didn't want to get cursed out, and I just watched fights happen like on a daily basis. And I think what changed for me is as I kept surfing the same spot, I got more comfortable in my identity in that spot. And what that means is I got more comfortable being myself. Like, I knew the spot, and before that, I feel like I almost had a bit of jealousy towards the other people that were in the water because they knew the water and I didn't. And so what I found myself doing is I went from trying to get out of everyone's way so I didn't get into a fight to like kind of standing my ground almost, like it was almost primal, like sitting in the middle of a group of white dudes, like the one little dot in the middle, because I knew I was supposed to be there. Like I knew that spot better than all of them. I came every day just as much as they did, and like I had earned my space there. And so I saw my energy change from dealing with localism to avoiding it to kind of like almost welcoming it. Because I would find guys would like oftentimes like drop in on my wave and then be like, it's nothing, but if I did it to them, I would get like this side eye. And I remember Rhonda was there, we were surfing, and there were like 3-4 people on this wave, and this guy is going off on me. Just going off on me, and so I turned around and I told him, you need to calm down. And just the whole everything. It was a sight to be seen. And I think that before I would have been like very fearful, you know, like, oh my God, this man, like I shouldn't be here. This isn't my space, and he's yelling at me. And then going from that to like, okay, this guy is gonna do his localism thing, but like, I am supposed to be here too, and I'm gonna tell you what you need to do because you are going in another direction. So,
Yeah, I think I have numerous stories too. I mean, I think there's a guy here in Pacifica who's gonna beat me up in the parking lot. Big guy who drives a big truck. He's known for like, anyway, he's you know, like Pacifica, there's localism, and I don't like that attitude. It is very primal. I just look at it's like, this is dumb. You're a bunch of monkeys, you know. But I've transitioned more into the area. It's like, what's going on with this person, right? Why are you being the way you are? And it happened maybe a couple of years ago here. It was my fault. I dropped in on the guy and I didn't see him. And I said, hey, sorry, I dropped in on you. He started yelling at me, screaming at me. And I said, why are you yelling? I said I was sorry. I just need to get stuff off my chest. That was his response. So it's like, sometimes I think like there is that localism, but I think it's just they've gotten used to the mentality. They know their friends. They go to the same spot. So they've gotten used to it. And somebody else comes around that shares the break, they don't want to share it. You know? So I think it's like, people like us, we need to go together in groups. You know, I think we need to support each other. But also it's like, you know, when we go and we see other people struggling, I always make sure that I support them, right? I want to be, because I was that person eons time ago. Like I was struggling in the surf and I didn't know how to read the water and I felt really intimidated, right? And then at the same time, like I surf at OB and there's a lot of guys out there with a lot of attitude and ego driven. Right? The male ego is very fragile and is very live and right? And a lot of the times when I'm out there surfing with them, I just smile. Because like, what can you do? Localism, I experience in a different way when I do travel, right? We talked about it, I went to Bali this summer, had a great time surfing, but it's a really strange way of traveling for me, being a person of color, and Bali is very colonial. It's a lot of Aussies, blonde hair, blue eyes. Nothing wrong, but it's very like, I'm here to surf, so get out of my way. You know, even like the local who struggle, the local guides who are trying to make money by being surf guides, who struggle because a lot of the Aussies come over and want to become guides and whatnot. You know, and this is known, and it's a hidden secret. When a lot of surf travelers travel on boats, they don't leave surfboards or share anything because they don't want local people to learn how to surf, because they want the break to be their own break whenever they go on boats or wherever they travel to. And it's a really interesting, different type of localism, because you watch WSL and people surf at Tahiti. Who are the people serving all the surfers, right? And it's always people of color, which I find like, really, you can't find other people to serve you? Like, why is it always black and brown people serving all of these athletes?
And why aren't they surfing?
And why aren't they surfing, right? Why aren't they out there filming? They could be commentators. And there's interesting, like, before Tahiti, there's always this homage of like Tahitian culture. So they do this kava ceremony. Great. But what happens to the rest of Tahitian culture? Why isn't that incorporated more into WSL or into the mainstream of surfing, right? Anyway, going too far.
So people outside of the mainstream were used to navigating multiple communities, multiple worlds. I wanted to ask Kyla first, what was it like for you in the pro track navigating two worlds? In your case, it's really two opposing worlds many times. Who were you out with? Who were you not out with? What conversations did you have and not have? All of that.
All right. It was definitely a very juxtaposed situation. So free and so celebrated, privately, and then so closeted and so femme publicly, because that's what the industry wanted, just thinking specifically and like going through the O'Neill factory where you get to pull your clothes, and looking over at like the men's stuff, and weren't allowed to get the men's stuff because they want you in the lady stuff until one of the other athletes, like a very femme young athlete, wanted a flannel, like my boyfriend's flannel. And so she got it, and so then the rule became you could get one item from the men's section. So there was that. Definitely just, trying to navigate the worlds. Was told by my sponsors that I couldn't come out. My team manager, who was like a friend at that point, was hearing rumors that maybe I was gay, and so asked me, and was like, well, you got to keep that under wraps, and it was very much, I had already known that, because the CEOs of these companies who are paying you don't want to see that and don't want to know about that. So that was the world. The competition side, it was the women's standalone events were awesome because there was all the women, and you got the best conditions, and it was just the women hanging out. And then when it was the men and women combined, that's when it was there's the tensions. We'd get sent out once the wind picked up and the tide dropped and the waves got bad. But there was also this like undertone, and these aggressions that would happen towards us. Like one time on the heat sheet, somebody had crossed it out and put lesies, and there was this tone. You couldn't be out in the industry. It was very, very clear.
And what kind of biases and the relationship between the female surfers and the judges and the sponsors, like how did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, the most telling is that you want to get paid more, you show a little more ass, and you kiss up to the CEOs of these companies. You sleep with them, one or two of them really helps. That was very, very much a thing. Is this being filmed? Where's this gonna go?
Transparency is very important.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. So similar question to Rhonda and Natasha. The context is, as people of color, people outside the mainstream, we're used to moving through different groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that in the surf community, outside the surf community?
Well, I can move pretty easily because I know how to code switch, and that's something that you learn very early coming into the surf industry. If you can't speak in the same language that they speak in, then you're a kook, and that's a word I don't use because it's too close to kook. So how I navigate is I use my background. My best friend is Caucasian. I mean, this is where I am. It doesn't take away from my blackness or me not being able to navigate. It's coming up against the obstacles once you try. I can get there, but the attitude or the demeanor of people that are around me, that's a little bit different. So how I navigate is, hey, I got a beer in the car before I hit the press box, before I hit the ASR shows, and you just want to relax. And I'm pretty chill. Like I'm chill. Don't get me in the other direction because then it's crazy. But I'm pretty chill when it comes to like being able to navigate. If you come at me a different way, we were covering the Surfer Pole Awards in Orange County one year, and we had the best spot. I mean, we got there early. We were right there on the edge of the carpet, and people were literally coming up to us going, "Are you BET? Do you know these surfers? Do you know this industry?" And then got surprised because I sat there talking to Jeff, Jeff from the Zephyr Shop and at Cuppa. Yeah. So the guys that started like the whole Zephyr scene were standing there, and they were just like, "Rhonda, we understand why you're here. We want you to continue to put this message out." At the time, I was just only representing guys. I was representing guys, by the way, for 15 years before I even thought about women. So how I'm able to navigate is I have a best friend. She's my confidant. She knows when I go over the edge. She's like, okay, that's too far. Pull yourself back, and I'm able to navigate through. Just being me. I'm chill.
And not giving
Just don't get
not
me
giving-
mad.
not giving up.
And I never give up. That's my parents. Having those kind of parents and having the background that I have, and having an education on how people see you and how people can treat you differently. That helped going through this. I think I learned that in kindergarten. So,
And not giving a
yeah. So let me just say this. I don't give a fuck about your feelings. I don't. I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm not here to be the balance for whatever is missing in the surf industry. I'm trying to tell you my story and how I'm trying to get these girls moved to the next level. It was a level that they haven't been able to compete in before. It was an arena. So you might walk out of here and not like me tonight, and that'll be okay too. Just don't add me on Facebook.
I got caught up in your surf. Thinking about the question of how do you deal with both, I think for me it's knowing what to do or say and when to do or say it in what environment. And I think that's my coping mechanism for dealing with both environments. When you asked that question, I thought about my experience of surfing in a diverse environment when I lived in Puerto Viejo, and then when I came here, and examples, and my experience surfing there with other women of color would be just very open, like we would get out of the water, and if we were making dinner and my friend saw one of my twists on loose, we'd be talking, she'd be twisting my hair, you know, it was like very freeing, and it was like, it felt a lot like a community. And then I thought of when I first came here and I got out of the water and threw on a pair of shorts. And I remember wearing short shorts with thick thighs in Santa Cruz at Pleasure Point. There was a little girl that was like, went over to call her daddy because it was like such a big thing. And for me, that was when I learned, okay, you can't just be as free as you normally are. And so knowing things to do, like not doing that, or being in a parking lot and knowing that I can't just tear off my wetsuit. So I use my Marlin Ray. It oftentimes feels a bit isolating, but just knowing like what I can and cannot do in certain environments has allowed me to move through both communities and still feel safe.
I think at this point I've learned how to navigate, but I think in the last few years there are more people of color surfing, so I've started to surf more with them. I have a friend that I recently met, he's African American, and his name is Elijah. And my other friend, his name is Jemiah. I'm like, I'm surfing with two angels. You know? So, and also luckily, like I've been attracting more people and women of color and men of color, and we've been sort of surfing together and starting, you know, little pockets of, hey, we'll surf together when we can, and there's other pockets that, navigating both sides, I think you've learned that over time, but I think interesting, what also, on the flip side, what's been happening is that I'm just gonna put it out there. Sometimes when you are changing in your Marlin Bay poncho, I get exotified. And especially when I travel, especially here, both by like men and women, and especially white women. Because long hair, surfer, brown man, and it sounds like I should enjoy the attention, but to be put into a box and to be looked at in a way of like, you're like this exotic from somewhere else that I might want to have, like, it's tough to navigate that. And I haven't really kind of figured that out. And it happens like even with, like, it's nice to get the looks when you're at Noriega changing, but then it's like, why you're staring at me a little too long, and I'm really uncomfortable, you know?
Now you know how women feel.
Yeah, welcome to our world. I was over here like for him.
What's that?
I was over here like for him.
Cool. That was a great. Actually, bringing that up is a good transition in terms of you're saying, you know, there's more people of color surfing in general. You know, over the last 10 years with smartphones and social media, of course, we're seeing more and more people outside the norm, mainstream surfing, and it's becoming normal. You know, so like alternative local surf communities are growing everywhere. We're seeing it more. But the problem is we're not seeing it represented and reflected in mainstream media, in surf contests. And what is it going to take for them to catch up to the new reality? Because it really is the new reality. I mean, just look at us right here. Look at this community. And if you just search online, I mean, you can see there's brown, black, everyone surfing everywhere. So, question is, what do you think it's going to take for mainstream media and surf contests and that whole world to catch up to what is happening right now?
The Tokyo 2020 Olympics.
Yeah.
I think just time too. I think the continued social media presence. I think we just need to keep infiltrating that and keep up with that, and then eventually I think the mainstream will see that, because it's all about marketing with them, so see that they'll find their little ways to make it marketable and to make it infiltrate in the mainstream.
But you were saying, when we were talking too, that you see it getting worse, right? The misogyny and why do you, tell me why you see that,
Yeah.
How you're seeing it and why you think
Right.
maybe.
I was saying how it feels like, so I haven't been in surfing competitively since 2009 or so, and it feels like then there were a lot more, it felt like we were getting closer to maybe we could be out, maybe we could, be out and still get a sponsorship. And now it just feels like everything's retracted even more. That now it just feels like it feels really straight. The scene to
more
me
and
now.
more straight.
More and
You're
more
saying
straight.
that.
Yeah. And I mean it's just shifted. It's a lot younger. It feels like a lot of younger girls traveling with their parents, and it's just the whole dynamic has definitely shifted. But hopefully it'll shift again. It will shift again.
And you were mentioning one of the best female surfers that you know is gay, and she doesn't have sponsorship, right? That's the real.
Right, for sure. It was always the case. Certain athletes like Silvana Lima, such a shredder, and always has been for so long, and still is shredding, and does a GoFundMe to get on the tour, and doesn't reach her goal, and just kind of recently seems like is starting to maybe fall off the scene because she just can't get the money to travel and to follow the tour and compete. Yeah, it's a shame. Should I end on that doom and gloom? No, there's hope. Sorry. What was the original question? Mainstream.
Mainstream.
Yeah, when is mainstream going to catch up to the reality of this happening right here?
The reality is that mainstream, big companies, media, whatever you want to call it, isn't going to change the face of their marketing campaigns or ads until they can make money off of a new population of people. And so if they have a new population of people that no longer match their advertisements, they're going to be forced to have to change what the people in their advertisements look like. And the only way that we can kind of force a hand in doing that is being very vigilant about increasing access to water for communities that otherwise wouldn't have it, because they will have no other choice. We can't just say do the right thing and reflect our diverse world in your ads, because it's not going to make them money. So the only way to do that is to force their hand in doing it.
I'm going to share a little bit of data. So the outdoor industry, which I was really heavily part of, climbing, excluding surfing, 80% of the people who buy the product are white males. And traditionally, that's what's been happening. That's the population that buys, and they're all aging out. So the outdoor industry has a foundation that is creating ways to diversify. REI has a big initiative, North Face has a big initiative. So a lot of companies are sort of like looking at, because the people who buy their product are aged, right? So who are the new people? And it really is, like you said, it is people like us.
I wanted to just end with something that I read from Dina Gilio Whitaker. She's a Native American Indian writer, and she.
Thank you for this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. But this quote I thought was what she wrote. Just really was so articulated so well. The indigenous knowledge embedded in the practice of surfing is at its core the recognition of the right relationship between humans and the environment, but also of the right relationship of humans to each other. Everyone who surfs, native and non-native alike, can grasp this knowledge as the guiding wisdom for an intelligent relationship of human to ocean and environment more broadly. But without acknowledging the history of human relationships built on domination and work to transcend it, surf culture will stay stuck in shallow narratives constructed by marketing sound bites designed for nothing more than to sell products and continue exploiting other people's lands. So chew on that. And thanks guys so much.
Thank you, Joyce.